Hi, Claire.
Hi, Zoe.
How's it going?
Oh, okay. Not too bad.
Well, we're doing well despite the fact that Quillette's allegedly a far-right publication.
Yeah, you're right. So we've been misrepresented once again.
Classic.
It came to my attention earlier this week, an organisation called the Media Research Centre, which I don't really know much about. I think it's a conservative organisation, but they seem to be highly partisan. So I'm not, I don't know how much to trust this organisation. But they apparently spend their time FOIing departments, so bureaucracies in the United States, and they FOI'd the Department of Homeland Security, and they found some grant money, hundreds of thousands of dollars of grant money given to an academic who is an activist. And
many such cases.
Part of his grant application included an image called the Pyramid of Far-Right Radicalization. And in this image, down the bottom is sort of like mainstream conservative organizations in the United States. Like every organization on this pyramid was American. We're Australian. We were the only international organization, but we were further up on this pyramid of far-right radicalization.
Mm-hmm. We're in tier 2.
We were in tier 2 next to InfoWars and the Proud Boys, which is a terrorist organization in the United States.
InfoWars, PragerU, and Turning Point.
Turning Point USA. And I think they considered us to be more radicalizing and right-wing than Fox News. So, I mean, it's really hard to know how to respond to such blatant misrepresentation. I mean, a person could have not read a single one of our articles to come to such a conclusion. Just clicking on our website and poking around makes it clear that we are a classical liberal centrist organisation. Any person who cannot tell the difference between classical liberalism or centrism and partisan right-wing advocacy or even far-right advocacy just shouldn't be commenting in the public arena. I mean, it's really quite astonishing that such misrepresentation continues. I mean, we were misrepresented when we first sort of became successful. When we had traction back in 2018, 2019, we were misrepresented quite frequently by a lot of academics who were sort of disgruntled or even envious about our success. And so I was like, okay, haters are going to hate, right? But now in 2023, we have suffered, as you know, Zoe, we have suffered so much abuse from the right wing in America.
Yeah, but you still do.
Because of our stances on COVID. Every single day we are getting comments and trolls on our social media accounts from people who hate me. And to still be misrepresented by left-wing academics as being far-right when we are hated by the far-right, it really gets under my skin. And it's like, when is this going to stop? When is this going to end?
Yeah. And I have little hope that it will end. I'm not sure. Like, these people, it's like they don't want to see the truth. They're willfully blind. They want to put us in a certain box, and that's easier. And like, when I saw this pyramid, which looks like it was done on Microsoft Paint, by the way, like, it's so bad. It looks very amateur. It makes me want to laugh. Like, it's horrible, but it's also hilarious because anyone who actually reads us or knows us or any of the editors personally knows that we are not far right whatsoever. I'm barely even classed as conservative. Like, we're all very centrist, and it's just ridiculous. And it's sad that I can't believe there are academics like this teaching at universities. Like, and in Australia as well, remember there was that one academic who wrote this piece, Quillette, Classical Liberalism and the International New Right. Some academic from, I don't know, should I say her name?
Well, if you've got it in front of you.
Yeah, Imogen Richards and Callum Jones. So the reason I came across this, it's actually a book. A chapter in a book. And it's, I think, recommended reading in a number of political courses at Australian unis. And I came across it because it was referenced on our Wikipedia page, which is yet again subject to misrepresentation, vandalism. But they get away with it because they reference these academic sources, even though they're completely biased. These people are activists, And it's, you can be an activist, but when you're also, signing off on people's degrees and it's not right.
Yeah. And I mean, we should make it clear that it's entirely valid for academics and researchers to have opinions about us. And I think it's entirely valid. If some academics want to write a chapter in a book and talk about how they think that classical liberalism is a facade for something more nefarious, I mean, they're entitled to their views. That's fine. The problem is that these types of critiques or views are not balanced out by opposing viewpoints. And the problem that we have encountered, and I know that other people have encountered, is that some people with these very hard left views, and by hard left, I don't mean necessarily communist or socialist, just that there's a type of activists who views anything to the right of them as being far right. So it doesn't matter if you're in a moderate or in the centre, or you're all the way over with Alex Jones. To these activists, you're all the same. So that type of perspective, I mean, it's common among activists, but activists who hold that perspective are very organised, and they become editors on Wikipedia. They become academics.
Moderators on Reddit.
Yeah, moderators on Reddit, that's right. And so there's a level of organisation that moderate people, such as ourselves, just cannot compete with. Because, like I was saying to you in another chat, moderate people, or people who have other things to do, like go to work and raise children, aren't that invested in politics. And so they have better things to do than spend their free time editing Wikipedia. But what that means is there's a vacuum, and that vacuum gets filled by people with quite hardened, fanatical views. And so that's when you get this type of misrepresentation going unchallenged. Now, I don't mind if people misrepresent me or Quillette, but I do get annoyed when it goes unchallenged. And given that we have copped so much criticism and flack from the right, it would be nice sometime if our left-wing critics acknowledged that. It would be nice if those who hate us on the left acknowledged that we are also hated on the right. If someone wanted to acknowledge that, I would take their criticism of us a little bit more seriously. But to date, I don't see that happening. And I think a lot of our critics on the left are completely unaware of how we're viewed on the right. There's a lack of, not only do they lack curiosity when it comes to reading our articles, they lack curiosity when it comes to discovering what other political tribes think of us.
Well, it's part of the way that faction of the left thinks, right? Like, they don't even want to consider us because then it's like wrong think, and they don't want to get cancelled by their own side by showing honesty or even sympathy towards us. They just don't even want to touch it.
And I mean, we all use heuristics, we all use shortcuts. Like, I'm sure I dismiss articles from, I mean, I do it all the time. I don't read articles from Fox News. I don't read articles from hyper-partisan. I don't read MSNBC or CNN because I know it's going to be biased and I'm not going to trust it. And so I guess people see the Quillette.com domain name and just immediately dismiss us. But it irritates me when people dismiss us because of what they've heard, not because they have any actual familiarity with our content.
It happens all the time. What frustrates me the most is that when I meet someone new, like I met a dude in the office a few days ago, and he was asking about where I worked, and I said I work for a magazine. What's the name? Quillette. And he looked it up, and the first place that most people go to is Wikipedia. I do it all the time. I love Wikipedia. But only through working at Quillette have I realized how biased it is, because I was in a back and forth war of attrition with some, moderator or full-time editor, Wikipedia editor. I just tried to update the most basic, benign info on our page. Like, it was about a podcast we used to have that we no longer have, and I just wanted to update that. Boom, all my edits have been removed. The page has been vandalized. I'm trying to just remove the vandalism. And because I'm a moderate person with a normal life, and I'm not playing, video games online all day and like getting into,
editing wars.
I spent too much time in this one editing war, but I don't have the technical knowledge to do all this stuff,
Yeah. And you found in poking around on Wikipedia that the people who edit our page are the editors of pages to do with transgender activism, and they're people who have that identity or maybe have interest. They edit trans activist pages, anime pages.
Yeah. It usually comes in a suite. Yeah. They tend to they have their pronouns in their Wikipedia page. I don't even know how you do that. They take it very, very seriously. And they're full-time editors of very niche gender ideology pages, and usually have, anime profile pictures and stuff like that. So they're just people who spend a lot of time online, which is saying a lot because I also spend a lot of time online, but in different spaces.
And, we should make our readers and listeners aware that this affects us not just on a personal level, but on a business level. We are currently banned from advertising on Meta platforms, so Instagram and Facebook, because our content is automatically flagged as being adult content. And that's been the case for years. And this ban will have slowed down our growth. It's just a fact. And, it's being misrepresented and mischaracterized. It does have consequences. It does harm your business, harm your reputation. It does make it harder to grow and reach new audience members because, it's, people hear about you before they become familiar with who you actually are.
Yeah, we haven't been able to run an ad successfully on Meta, so that's Facebook and Instagram, for at least 6 months now. And the only successful ad I could run, it took me hours on the phone to customer service somewhere overseas.
It's been a lot longer than 6 months.
Yeah.
It's been a couple of years.
Yeah. It's very frustrating. And then there's the whole Reddit thing as well, where I'd try to post a link to one of our articles in a subreddit and got told by at least like 3 moderators that linking to Quillette is completely banned. You just cannot do it.
Yeah. And that was the
Europe subreddit that has a good 3 million. I'm not sure.
4.5 million?
Yeah, a few million members. And then, how do they... I asked them about it, and they just reference things like this, that, oh, well, you're just like InfoWars.
Yeah.
Look, this academic who is an expert in political, ideologies says that you're the same, so boom, you're out. It's very unfair. It's very frustrating.
I think, it's annoying, and it's annoying for our writers. We published 2 long reads recently by a criminal law expert called Andrew Hamill on the Adnan Syed case. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but his case was the basis of the Serial podcast, which kind of launched true crime podcasts as a genre. Anyway, he was exonerated in part because of the podcast, and Andrew Hamill looked at the exoneration and gained access to all of the legal case files and produced 2 long reads for us, basically arguing that the exoneration was wrong. And his style of journalism is incredibly forensic. He goes into a level of detail that is very rare, even for the most thorough journalists. Anyway, his articles were completely apolitical. There's nothing political about this case. It's an issue of miscarriage of justice, and the articles were shared by the creator of The Wire. And the creator of The Wire wasn't familiar with Quillette, so he wasn't prepared for all of the comments coming underneath his tweet, basically saying that, why that we're some kind of far-right organization, why are you sharing Quillette? And, I felt sorry for the author in that situation. Here he was having his work shared by someone of very high esteem in writing and in culture in general, and yet he's being attacked not because of anything he's done, but simply because of the place that he chose to publish at. I mean, it's unfair for us as well, but in that situation, I felt sorry for the author. And it's just regrettable that, I think it's something to do with the culture wars of the United States, that they're just so toxic that even sharing articles from an outlet is considered some kind of transgression.
And I know you saw a tweet below that, which was like, responding to the creator of The Wire, like, oh, don't you know that Quillette is a bastion for far right and Proud Boys, and I was like, yeah, but there are also people like me who read it, like who work here, like, maybe some Proud Boys have liked a few of our articles. Like, you can't control everything. Like, but they can't. It's that guilt by association. Like,
but I don't have it at all. I mean, I read Jacobin, even though I'm not a socialist. I read the Worldwide Socialist Web, even though I'm not a socialist. I mean, I said before that I don't read Fox News, which is maybe a bit harsh. I read a lot of conservative magazines. I read Wall Street Journal. I read Commentary. I write for The Australian in Australia, which is a centre-right publication. But I read a lot of left-wing outlets. I read the New York Times. I read Washington Post. I read The Economist. I'm subscribed to about 40 different Substacks, which is going to send me broke. But, I'm promiscuous in what I read, and I cannot understand the mindset that you wouldn't read an article about something you're interested in because of the platform that it's on. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
But, there's a lot of people out there who really, I think, just really lack curiosity, I'm afraid.
Yeah, it's sad. And I don't know if you can make these people more curious. Like, I'm not sure if you can encourage it.
Probably not. It might have something to do with the personality trait of openness to experience. Yeah.
Like, ironically, these people are actually quite conservative
in temperament.
Yeah.
You're exactly right.
They're scared of new experiences or new people.
Mm-hmm.
They're not curious at all.
Yeah, that's right. And so openness to experience, which is a trait that I'm high in, and I know that you're high in, is a trait that's associated with liberal politics, small L liberal politics. But in today's climate, I would imagine that it's associated with heterodoxy. So being able to read and absorb ideas from all political persuasions, conservative, left-wing, whatever. And you're right. You see these people who have progressive politics, but they're incredibly fixed, closed-minded and conservative in their temperament, in not willing to budge and not being open to new ideas. And it's kind of ironic because, you've got the progressive values, but this very militant sort of personality approach that goes along with it. So it's interesting.
And that's why I was so scared to come out as heterodox, because before that I was hanging around with very militant left-wing people, and we always bonded because culturally, we enjoyed the same music and art, and we were open-minded in that way, in a way that conservatives are a bit more, daggy or straighty 180. That was my idea. And I didn't want to lose those people because they're the people I have fun with and I bond with. But ideologically, a lot of them just disowned me. But there are a few who I'm still in contact with. And actually, now I've got better friends and better connections because, I've found people who are truly free-thinking and truly open-minded.
Yeah. And I think it's got a lot to do with the difference between progressivism and liberalism. So I identify as a liberal, liberal centrist. And so being a liberal means that if you have a liberal temperament, if you have liberal values, you tend to be interested in culture, you tend to be interested in film and music and experiences. And, a big part of the driving force behind Quillette is not just my love for culture, but John and Jamie's as well. We want the good aspects of a liberal culture to be preserved and to not be politicized. So one of the problems with progressivism is politicizing everything to the point where artistic merit is devalued. Scientific integrity is no longer, is sort of subsumed by activist agendas. So it's, if you're a liberal, you see the world beyond politics. You see art and science and all of the beautiful things of the world as having nothing to do with politics. And the reason why I clash with progressives is because they want politics to apply to everything. I want to sit down and enjoy a movie without thinking about the political message of the movie. I want to go to an art exhibition and enjoy the aesthetic beauty of the art that I'm looking at. I want to go to a concert and not care about, the diversity on stage and who, what representation is happening. I don't care about that stuff. I just want to enjoy the world. And that's what I think liberalism is. And, it's just a shame that a lot of people who would traditionally be liberals have now sort of been sort of captured or have drifted over to progressivism. And I think what happens is that a lot of people would have ordinarily been liberal. It's just that because of their social milieu, peer pressure, conformity, they have to adjust their views and become political and politicized like everybody else.
Yeah, and it's a shame because liberalism is truly colorblind and sexless, and none of that matters.
Yeah. Well, it can matter. It doesn't have to matter. You can be fluid. You can just, you can change your mind. You don't have to be fixed in one position.
Yeah. Do you think it's just a coincidence that none of our staff are American? Like, do you think there's something to do with the liberalism in Australia and the UK and Canada where all our editors are from?
That's an interesting question. And so we're Australian, Jamie is English, and John is Canadian. And so we're a Commonwealth company. And I think there is something to British classical liberalism that is quite robust and perhaps more muscular than the American version. I mean, the American version, so in America, to be a liberal is to be a progressive, basically. And liberalism is associated with, late-term abortions and
blue hair and
just like it's just excessive.
Yeah.
I think
it's a caricature.
I mean, I love America, don't get me wrong, but I think one of the problems with America is extreme liberalism, which I guess you could call progressivism, and but it runs in both directions. So you can see extreme liberalism on the right as well with libertarianism. I don't consider myself a libertarian.
Yeah.
I don't think the state is always bad. Whereas, so you can see, libertarianism leading to extreme outcomes, like with the lack of regulation of guns, and then extreme liberalism, where 15-year-olds have bodily autonomy to cut off their breasts.
Yeah.
You can see the extremes happening on both sides. And I mean, this might be, a lot of Americans might disagree with me. I would say it's liberalism to the extreme. Whereas I think in the Commonwealth countries, Britain, Australia and Canada, we have a more moderate version of liberalism, and you can be a liberal and also be a small c conservative at the same time. And this has nothing to do with what political party you vote for. You don't necessarily have to vote for the Liberal Party in Australia. You can be a Labor voter and still be small c conservative. And I know the same is in Britain.
Yeah.
I know it's a similar situation in Britain.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what the Labor Party has traditionally represented here. Like, people who are more for workers' rights and unionism and things like that, but pretty conservative people in many ways. And
there's plenty of people who advocate for workers' rights who are also small c conservatives. Yeah. There's lots of people, and I think if the more that the Labor Party sort of lean into that, the more successful they will be. That's my
I agree.
biased view, though.
Yeah. No, I'd love for the Labor Party to return to more traditional Labor values, which my personal belief is that Albanese does represent that.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. Shall we chat about your column that was published today in The Australian?
Yeah, well, I mean, speaking of misrepresentation, I wrote about misrepresentation of gender-critical feminists, and in particular, Holly Lawford-Smith and Kathleen Stock, who are two philosophers, and they have been incredibly brave in standing up to a minority of fanatics who harass them, abuse them, defame them. And I watch how Holly and Kathleen conduct themselves just online and through their writing and through their speeches, and they are so dignified. And I think it's because they are philosophers. They put forward reasoned arguments. They don't hit back at their critics with name calling and ad hominem or invective. They're calm and measured. And honestly, if you read their work, Kathleen Stock's or Holly Lawford-Smith's work, it's just, it's hard to see how, I mean, they put forward such carefully moderate views. It's hard to see why and how they have come to be so misrepresented. So Holly's been smeared as a fascist on her campus. There have been posters and stickers put around Melbourne University's campus saying that only fascists take her course.
Imagine that. Imagine going into your workplace every day over a period of months and having stickers on your office door saying, you're a Nazi, you're a bigot. It's horrible.
Yeah.
It's bullying.
Yeah, absolutely. And in her case, I think the Dean of Arts at Melbourne University sent out an email which may have fanned the flames of that situation. The Dean of Arts described a women's rights rally as dehumanizing and antithetical to the views of the university. And in Kathleen's case, she recently gave a talk at the Oxford Union, and that was, she had to go to the talk flanked by bodyguards. She's received death threats for her views and was advised back in 2021, apparently, to put in CCTV cameras in her house. So she has suffered extreme abuse for her views. Now, what are her views? Her views are simply that trans women are not literal women. She has said repeatedly that trans people deserve human rights and care and compassion and safety, but being a feminist and an analytic philosopher, she has interrogated some of the assumptions that underpin trans activism and has found them wanting. And those assumptions, some of those assumptions are, do we describe trans women as literal women because in failure to do so, they're going to harm themselves or commit suicide? That's just not a good reason. That would, if you're going to present an argument in a philosophy class and you say you have to accept my argument, otherwise I'm going to kill myself.
Yeah,
you don't pass the philosophy class.
Yeah, it's not a strong argument.
And so because of their training, they're inherently suspicious of arguments that come from an emotional place, so emotional reasoning. And fundamentally, that's all that trans activism is. It's just emotional reasoning, right? It's not based on, what we would traditionally call it's not based on proofs or logical kind of argumentation. And so I think, I just admire them so much for sticking to their. So they would have been they would have focused on different topics before trans activism sort of exploded. And
I just admire them for sticking to their principles and their ability to think rationally whilst this sort of hysteria has taken over large parts of society, and not sort of just caving in and cowering and conforming. Because not only have they been attacked by activists, they've also been attacked by their colleagues as well. And that can be incredibly damaging and hurtful for an academic to be sort of shunned and ostracized by one's colleagues. And so I think they deserve tremendous credit.
I agree. Good on them. They're very brave women. Okay. Well, shall we end it there?
Yeah, we've covered a lot.
We have. Until next week.
Until next week, Zoe. Good chatting. Bye.